Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Heritage University. My name is Melissa Rogers, and I'm the Vice President of Business Development with Heritage Property Management Services. If this is the first time we are meeting, welcome. For those of you that are joining us again and again and taking advantage of our great educational opportunities, you are in for a treat. In great preparation for budget season, we've got our Vice President of our Vice President of Accounting, Sharon Moschel, teaching a great course about association financials, what the role of the treasurer is, and for those of you that are Heritage partners and utilize Vanica, which is our software program, she's also going to run through some financials for you so that you can get comfortable with what you're reviewing and some do's and don'ts when preparing your budget. So, with everything that we're going to discuss this evening, we do want to make sure that you know we are going to be talking in a general capacity. So if there are any specific questions that you have particular to your association, we certainly encourage you to contact your community manager if you partner with one, or to reach out to your association's counsel to ensure that the information is correctly applicable to your association's governing documents. On that note, quick housekeeping rules. We've got question and answers that are going to be populated in your upper right-hand corner. Feel free to drop your questions as Sharon goes through her presentation. We will be doing a question and answer session at the very end of the presentation. And for those of you who cannot join or stay with us for the entire recording, this is going to be a 60-minute entertaining educational opportunity that will be recorded for those of you that need to hop off. We will send you all of the great resources that we're going to be sharing this evening, as well as the recording. So with that, I now introduce you to Sharon Moschel.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm Sharon Moschel. I run the accounting department here at Heritage. For those of you who have never been in my office, we have about 8 property accountants. We have 3 accounts receivable folks, and we have 5 accounts payable. So it's a pretty big little organization here just in our department. Tonight I'm going to talk to you about association financial. Yay, the financials. I'm the treasurer, now what? I love this picture I found. It's like, yay, I'm the treasurer. Money grows on trees. We have plenty to spend. No, not necessarily. Next. Thank you, Josh. So you may be asking yourself, all right, so what is the board or treasurer's role regarding the financials? What financial decisions impact our association the most? How do we read all those reports we receive? And what do we do about all those numbers? What do they really mean? And why do we even have to be involved in the financials when we have a management company? These are some of the questions that I actually have boards ask me before. So hopefully through this presentation, we're going to be able to answer all of these for you. Next. All right, I want to give you a little bit of history on the homeowner association, what it means. Associations were formed, and they are formed as a non-for-profit corporation. They have common interests and share amenities for its members. So that includes places like the condominiums. That's an obvious shared amenities with the roof and painting and buildings and things of this nature. But also it became very popular to have the shared amenities like the swimming pool and tennis. And so your members are responsible for paying for those repairs and the upkeep of those assets. The associations are run only by the board. So it's very important to have a good board of directors and elect the board of directors that will actually manage the assessments and the expenses of your community. Every member, including yourself, is impacted and relies on the board to maintain or improve their investment. If you think about it, boy, this market's been crazy lately with the investment opportunities. You want to be able to maintain that investment. You want homeowners to be able to want to come to your community and live. Next. So, protect the community and the homeowner's investment. What you want to do is start off with a shared vision. All right, with the board, you're going to get together and you want to decide what you need to do with this community. It could be moving from a gazebo to an actual clubhouse. You could have a vision of actually collecting more assessments. But you want to get together as a board and have a shared vision to move forward to protect the assets and the assets of your association. So you always want to manage, take a business approach in managing your association. You need to come up with a maintenance plan, that's kind of obvious, and a financial plan. So you want to actually build a sense of community where folks want to live. All of these are contributing factors to a healthy association. Next. So these are the items that can derail the financial goals really quick. Underfunded assessments, poor stewardship, no long-term plan. This actually happened to the big condos there in Miami, and it's happening all over the place with condominiums, particularly when they are underfunded with their assessments to provide them a long-term plan. For example, when they're trying to put roofs on all of their buildings, when they're trying to do a massive paint job, or they have some stucco issues. Underfunded assessments will derail you in a heartbeat. Another problem we have are homeowners that are not understanding the association's obligations. We hear it all the time. Why do they want me to pay this? Isn't it the association's responsibility to pay this? Well, where did the associations get their money from? The homeowners. So it's all the homeowners' responsibility. They're not quite understanding what all obligations and the actual expenses that you're having to pay. The other one that derails you real quick are high delinquencies. These are folks that aren't paying. You're dependent upon their assessments, and if they're not paying, it can create a real problem in your association. Board members are confused about financial issues. Hopefully after our class tonight, you won't be confused. But board members have a tendency to overcomplicate the issues, and it's very, very simple. We try to keep it very simple for the folks that are involved in financials. And board members penny pinching. This can really get you in trouble if you're trying to postpone repairs or spend not as much money as you need to get the repair done correctly. Next. So treasurer's roll, here it is, take notes. Cash management, that makes sense. You're going to coordinate the management of your cash, checking account, reserve account, CDs, and I'm going to share a little bit more about how you do that later on. Policies, these are to help you develop and manage written policies such as a collection policy, maintenance policy, vendor usage. One of the policies that I actually came up with to help my community that I have at the in Florida is to come up with a maintenance request so that we could document requests for maintenance work that's needed, prioritize it, and find out how much it's going to cost so that we can manage our cash flow. Support to ensure that other board members and homeowners understand the financial information. It's usually the treasurer that is actually doing a presentation at the annual board meetings. Next, your role continues. Like I said before, you want to run the association like it is a business. Ensure that the association is run the right way. I always tell folks too that businesses do business with other businesses. So you want to hire professionals to actually work at your association. Financial overview, coordinate the setting of your goals. Wow, that's really budgets. Monitoring your actual expenses to the planned expenses. You can't exactly predict all of your expenses, but it's a good idea and it's a must to come up with as many of the types of expenses that you would have in your budget. Monitoring, then you want to monitor the collection of your assessments. You've got to review your aging and your prepaid status of the homeowners every month. We're going to talk about that some more too. Next. All right, here we go. 4 keys to running a successful community. Number 1, manage your asset revenue collection. That is ensuring that each homeowner is paying their dues each month or annual or wherever it is. Manage the cash position of the association. You're verifying information on the balance sheet, keeping an eye on it. Set your goals, budget, measure the performance. These are all keys to running a successful community. And most important too is exercise the fiduciary duties to the association. Remember, all of the decisions you make are not based upon your personal preference, but are what's good for the association. Next. All right, number 1, manage assessment revenue. I'm going to spend a few slides on this because it's extremely important. It's one of the most important areas that you'll spend your time on. Start with an efficient and effective dues, providing multiple ways to pay. Here at Heritage, we have several opportunities for the homeowners to pay via credit card, bill pay, checks coming to the office, mail their payments to the lockbox. Any way we can get their money. We even do draft if they set up a draft from BB&T. So you want to have the flexibility of your homeowner to be able to pay their dues. And if they don't pay, you need to have a collection policy in place. Now, Heritage, we will send out automatically what we call a first late letter, second late letter for you. And then from there on, you've got to have something in place to decide how you're going to go any further. Next. They're the biggest and most important source of income. We were just talking about it earlier. You know, you can't have bake sales. You're not supposed to do a arts and crafts sale. You're not going to make enough money. The most important source of your income for your association are your dues that come from the homeowners. That's all the money you're going to get. If you're have annual assessments and your community collects in January, that money's got to last you all year long. So it's extremely important to review and plan and to make sure at the end of the year, you still got money in the bank. The assessments are used to support the common expenses. All right, this is such as like your roads, your street lights, services, utilities, amenities, commonly owned buildings, your pools and your tennis courts. Most people know what those types of expenses are. But we also have assessments that are used to fund future expenditures, capital projects. This is where we fall short lots of times in collecting enough assessments. These monies, once they come in, are placed into a reserve account for those future expenditures. Special assessments are sometimes an option if you're dealing with revenue shortages and special projects. Say you've got a major repair that you need to do and you don't have enough in reserve, or you don't want to replenish your entire reserve fund, then you can do some special assessments to pay for that and maybe even get a loan later. We'll talk about that too. The governing documents indicate when and how a special assessment can be done. Next. Collection priorities. Be proactive in dealing with your delinquencies. I recommend you review your accounts receivable aging report every month and actually go to the portal and get a current report. If you're receiving your financials, say the 15th, you're going to get together with your board and review your financials on the 20th. Well, you're actually looking at a June 30th aging in our package we send you. What you need to do is get a current AR aging because some activity could have happened in between those times. So your collection efforts need to be done sooner rather than later. There's a 4-year statute of limitations for collections. If you've got some prior owners that owe you money, there's no way it's going to be collected. You might as well write them off. Don't even waste your time over having to look at them. And we'll be happy to help you do that. Most importantly, every association, I think I've said this about 3 times now, should have a collection policy. This is a guideline to guide the behavior and make decisions on how we're going to go about collecting it because you want to be fair to every single homeowner. Next. Delinquent homeowners cost the association money. Not only are you lacking funds It costs money to mail out late letters. Okay. It costs money if you're having to go all the way to and have expenditures with a legal firm. There's legal fees. And you know, if delinquent homeowners aren't paying, somebody's got to up the ante on your assessments to cover the expenditures. So it also costs you time, wasted time having to deal with it. So the sooner you start collecting and getting the money in, the faster, the best it is. When a homeowner is past due and they're sending in their money, they don't like this payment application, but this is what we have in our system to help the association. We pay or apply their payments to legal fees, late fees, and interest and special assessments, then to their regular assessments. Homeowners don't like this. They may send in their money for their regular assessment, say it's $100 a month, they may send it in for regular assessment, but if they were late and had interest or late fees or any legal fees, that $100 is first applied to those fees that cost you money, and then the balance goes to their regular assessments. And since they're short on their regular assessments, the ball starts rolling again. They get charged late fees and interest again. So we have that all the time when homeowners are ignoring the first attempt to put on late fees and interest. It will snowball after that. Next. All right, manage the cash position of the association. Is there enough money to meet the short-term obligations? Does the community have enough money to meet the long-term obligations? Only you would know if you've got a plan. So next, you need to manage your cash. Cash is the primary asset of the association. Operating funds should be in the FDI insured checking account. Our banking partner is Truist Association, a branch of Truist. It is not, your Truist Association Services is not the branch of Truist on the local corner. They are a part of it, and that Truist on the brick and mortar on the corner has your association's account information, but they do not have any homeowners information. As homeowners are able to go to a branch and make a payment, the branch actually takes that payment and mails it to the lockbox. So they don't have access to homeowner information. That can get very confusing sometimes. But our banking partner, again, is Truist Association Services. There's no commingling of the funds between communities. We manage over 1,500 checking accounts and reserve accounts. Reserves are created for future capital expenditures. You want to set money aside for that. Bank accounts are reconciled daily with Vantica. We're so excited and very fortunate that we're able to do this. And reconciliation involves actually just comparing the money that's in the bank with what our accounting records are. And then we have to, of course, resolve any differences. Next. Investments, reserve funds. Best practices for the HOA is to use a money market or CDs. Now, the money market and CDs lately have been paying extremely low rates of interest. They're coming up. Found out a CD recently had a 2%, yay. But the end of money market, I found one for 1%. So they're basically very low, but they're very, very safe because you want to keep your funds liquid. Liquidity is a fancy name for having easy and fast access to the money when you need it. So Heritage will help with any outside investments, but the board makes decisions and maintains the accounts. If you were to go open up a CD at another account, or excuse me, another bank, not a Truist account, it's the board's responsibility to maintain the signature cards and to maintain that account. If we needed money from the account, the board would have to go get the money. So it's kind of a disadvantage, but it might be a bit higher rate of return. You have to weigh the difference. Investments accounts will sometimes require personal information from the boards, including driver's license and social security numbers. So just be prepared if you go that route. And I'd be happy to help you with any of that information that you need. Account statements should be addressed to Heritage so that all transactions are properly shown on the financial statements and not addressed to the board's individual homes. Important priorities. So minimize the risk, Keep your funds liquid and earn some rate of return if you can. Next. Reserve fund goals. The best practice is having updated reserve study. And you need to fund your funding goals for the reserve should be based upon what they say in the reserve study. So in the absence of reserve study, the community should have a goal based upon the community needs, but one good ballpark is 1 year's assessment. So if your annual assessments are about $600,000 a year, then you should put $600,000 in your reserve, and that is probably if you've got pool, tennis, things of that nature. If all you have is the front gate, you may not need $600,000. I don't know why your assessments would be that high either, but so you've got to determine what your needs are, and actually a reserve study will help you. We actually have a class on reserve study. It was very, very good. I found it very informative, and but the reserve study will actually come out and look at your assets and tell you when you need to plan for a tennis court resurfacing, or plan on different aspects of the maintenance on your community's assets. If possible, communities set a goal for short-term emergencies. We have some communities that set aside some money that is designated for their insurance deductible, just to make sure they have it set aside. So you can have some short-term emergencies as well. 2 months of operating expenses would probably be a very good idea. Monies are transferred to the reserve based upon the budget. Okay, so if you've approved the budget and you're transferring $1,000 from your operating to reserve each month, we do that automatically for you, or we can do it upon request. It may be a good idea at year end, if you have a positive cash flow, you need to transfer the money from the operating to reserve at year end. So that's a great idea to look at a few days before year end, give us time to transfer. We need authorization from you, though, to transfer any money from reserves. Unless there's an emergency situation and there's an overdrawn situation, we have to get money from reserves. But we need your board approval to transfer money from reserves. Next. All right, bank loans. Wow, didn't know that the associations could get a bank loan. Yes, they can. These are unsecured loans. There's many banks out there that will not do an association lend. I mean, they will not lend to an association. Bank loans to associations are primarily based on a revenue stream. Of course, they've got to know how they're going to get their money back. So high delinquency will actually kill the deal. If you think about it, if they can't figure out or plan, the association can't pay the money back, then they're not going to be able to get a loan. So, but we have a great relationship with Truist, and I've not seen them turn down but one loan the entire time, 5 years I've been here, and that was because they only had 40% occupancy in their whole community. So didn't have enough money to pay the loan back. So they want to get paid back. Their interest rates are very good, and they are very competitive. Next, vendor maintenance or vendor management. We currently have over 8,000 vendors. Woo, too many to keep up with. A vendor setup form is required, along with the W-9 and the COI, which is a certificate of insurance to protect heritage and the homeowner from liability and fraud. It's very dangerous to the association hiring contractors and using vendors without precautions to protect the HOA. Vendors can trigger fines, suits, penalties, and damage claims unless simple procedures are rigorously followed. We get complaints about all the time. Why do they need a W-9? Why do we have to have insurance? Why can't I hire my neighbor's teenage son to come clean the pool? Those things can really, really trigger a lawsuit if there are damage claims. If the child breaks his neck falling into the pool, they can actually sue the association and sue Heritage. So it's very, very, very important for your vendors to be protected with certificates of insurance. Construction or service related vendors must also have a lien release. for payments that are anything over $5,000. And by the way, we also have a policy in place to have a second approval for any payments going over $5,000 to anybody, any of your vendors. Heritage requires a W-9 form to be completed for each vendor, even though the IRS may not require it, but for certain non-Inc, we require it for all W-9s. And one of the differences too is once a vendor is set up into our system, it has all associations have access to that vendor. So perhaps your association might say, oh no, he doesn't need a 1099. Oh, we're only going to pay him $200 this year. Well, he has access to be used by all, and somebody else may be using it, going to be paying him more than $250. So we require a a W-9 for each vendor setup. And at the end of the year, we send out 1099s. So your vendor should be licensed and insured. This is very important. Next, the invoice processing. Accounts payable processes are in place to pay all approved association invoices accurately and promptly. Since we're on cash basis, when an invoice is paid is when that transaction is recorded, not when it is just approved. So it actually has to go through the payment process to be recorded on the financials. Invoices are approved and coded by the CAM, except for utilities. Accounting will take on the responsibility of approving and coding your utility bills. We just don't have enough time to get those turned around, and a lot of it is set up on auto draft. Invoices are automatically uploaded into Bantica when sent to the invoices at heritageproperty.com. And this can be done by the manager, vendor, or board. It must be in a PDF form. Next. All right, so number 3, set financial goals and measure the performance of the association against those goals. That means make a budget and compare how your actuals are doing to that budget. You want to set realistic and relevant budget goals. You also want to set up some non-financial goals. Compare your financial performance to the goals for major categories. That information you will find on your statement of revenues and expenses. And compare the financial performance to the goals stated in a business plan. Say, for example, you have a business plan to get your collections down to lower rate. You know, you can compare those goals as well. So that's your business plan. Next. So let's talk about the budget. Melissa has a whole class on budgeting, and we're in budget season right now. It just started. The CAMs are in the process of looking at budgets. Some of my property accountants are already starting to look at budgets. We're definitely seeing a lot of increases in expenditures because of this inflation and the environment we're in right now. But I'm just going to go over a couple of things here about budgeting. Budgeting is essential for nonprofit. Just like I said, if you're only collecting your money once a year in the beginning of January, you've got a budget. You've got a plan. You've got to figure out how to achieve your goals. So budgeting is essential for nonprofit organizations in the success of achieving the goals and in the mission and managing their cash flow. That's very important, managing the cash flow. Budgeting is needed to obtain the assessment income needs. How do you know how much you need the homeowners to pay if you haven't come up with an expense budget? That's one of the first things you need to do is how much we've got to spend, and then go backwards and find out how much you've got to collect from the homeowners. But here's some of your big problems, and I know I've seen it. Homeowners don't want dues to increase. You're probably thinking the same thing. I'm a board member. I don't want the dues to increase, but I also see that it's a necessary evil. Many budgets, though, however, omit contributions to reserve. Earlier, I talked about how important that is to set money aside for future expenditures. And this is where some of the condos or have bigger, larger communities that have shared expenses get into trouble because they're not putting contributions into the reserve fund. Many budgets don't assume that they have any delinquencies. well, you do have some delinquencies. So you don't want to plan a budget on 100% collection. You have to figure out what your delinquents is, or assume what your delinquencies are going to be and subtract that. And, you know, you're going to get into big time trouble if you're not actually communicating the importance of the budget and the value that it holds for your community to the homeowners. You've got to be transparent, communicate it to the homeowners. Next. Annual budget should be strong. Communication. Just said that. Be realistic. Show that a good deal of thought, discussion, and planning were incorporated. Include all the financial obligations of the organization. Provide a consistent value for potential new home buyers. Meet the objectives of the community business plan and meet the value expectation of the homeowners. This is very important. And do you know that new home buyers do look at budgets? They can request an annual budget. Some lenders request the budget. So this is a very, very important and strong communication tool. Next. I'm going to say it again. Budget for the reserves. Reserve study. Keep your reserve study current. This helps support your budget needs by having a reserve study. Takes you out of coming up with the figure to say, oh, I think we're going to have to resurface the tennis courts in 5 years. Your reserve study will actually come out and say, we recommend, or it is suggested, or it looks like it might be needed in 4 years. The reserve study supports your budget funding. Board should adopt an aggressive policy of hitting that current year's fund target. Okay, if you've got to save money for a roof, if you just replaced the roof in your association at your condos, well, guess what? It's going to be needing to be replaced again in 15 years. You might as well start saving a little bit now than to wait in 15 years and have to come up with the money. If no reserve studies are there, then we recommend that you have to look at what your common area asset goals are, and you have to come up with a realistic estimate of what that money is going to need for. If you're only got the front entrance and you've got walls, and maybe you have a lights, it could be a very, very small reserve that you will need to put in there. But there is reserve money needed for emergencies and insurance and things of that nature. Like I said before, emergency fund, community associations to establish equal to 2 months of operating expenses. So this is a big, very important, the budget for reserve studies. For the reserve fund. Next. Capital expenditures. This is a biggie too. Capital expenditures should come out of the reserve fund. So remember, we were budgeting and planning for capital expenditures and to be paid out of the reserves fund. They're not part of your annual operating budget. Okay, when you're going through the budget exercise with your CAM, you will see it on there. But what happens is, to offset those expenditures for the capital, we transfer money from reserves. That's actually part of your budget, is to show that transfer from reserves. So it's kind of showing that I'm going to be paying for these capital expenditures out of our savings. Reserve study is built on a general estimate, not to be used as a detailed plan. So anytime you want to budget for your capital expenditures, you don't necessarily put that year every single thing that the reserve study indicates, only those things that you might anticipate having to replace. Associations should perform an engineer's inspection, which is your reserve study. And the CapEx could include items such as roofs, painting, paving, equipment upgrades, such to be, they're identified separately from repairs and maintenance. There's a lot of confusion sometimes. I'll give you a clear example, I think. It could be repairs and maintenance if you're going in and replacing the light bulb that blew out over there by the tennis courts. But if you were going to go through your whole entire community, including the streets and the tennis courts and playground and swim pool, and you're replacing all of the lights with new LED lights, that could be a capital expenditure. So it's not necessarily just based on monies either. It's actually based upon whether this is a repetitive type expenditure. Obviously, new roofs and painting and paving are very easy to identify, but sometimes some of the other items can be a little bit in the gray area. Next. All right, meet your fiduciary duty. Act in the best interest of the association. I said it again, operate your association as a business. Make sure the assets of the association are protected. You don't want new homeowners to come into your neighborhood looking to buy a house and they see that the clubhouse is all run down. That's not protecting an asset. You need to be sure to protect the assets. Make sure that you're transparent communication with the homeowners. So what you're always doing is looking to do your fiduciary duty for them and make the decisions that are best for the association. Next. Financial reports. All right, this is the meat of it all. Financial reports are usually referred to as a balance sheet income statement. They represent the financials for a certain period of time only. So since we use a modified cash basis of accounting, we provide the statement of revenues and expenses. We still call it an income statement, but it's really a statement of revenues and expenses. And what this report does, it actually reflects the cash flow of the association. When you're looking at the statement of income, statement of revenues and expenses, you're looking at cash that has been collected and the money that has been spent. I refer to it sometimes as the operating checkbook. Okay, so we're actually focusing on accountability rather than a profit. Associations are registered as not-for-profit. So you're not trying to capture how much profit you've made. You're just trying to capture who has paid, who hasn't paid, and what expenditures have we spent our money on. So that's a very important tool, and we're trying to keep it simple. Next. Understanding financial reports will facilitate the decision making. So there's two primary purposes. To provide the user with the financial information needed, you, user, board, could be homeowner, could be a lender, to make decisions relating to the financial position, association's financial position. It enables the board to control association's financial operations. So it's a very important tool to help with the decision making. Next. Next. Thank you. Wow, look at all this stuff. Whew, this is too much. Every month we send you what we call a financial package, and all of these reports are in your financial package. You have your balance sheet, statement of revenues and expenses, cash forecast, the budget spread report, bank reconciliations, aging report, the general ledger trial balance, prepaid homeowners report, the bank statements, the cash disbursement, ownership transfers, and we provide all copies of all invoices paid. Whew, that's a lot of stuff. I am not going to go through all of that individually. Be happy to go through it if you email me or request it. But basically, it is available for you to look at. I am going to go through some that are where I think they're very important to take a look. And by the way, this is what's coming to you in the package, and we deliver the package by the 15th, sometime sooner. But you can get all of these reports except for your bank statements because they're electronic copies. You can get all of these reports on the portal. You don't have to wait for the statements to come. When the statements do come, they'll be final. And on the 27th of each month, the balance sheet and income statement or statement of revenue expenses, balance sheet and statement of revenue expenses is provided to the homeowner on the 27th. We wait to give the board time to take a review, see if there's any reclasses or any other financial decisions that need to be made before we send it out to the homeowners. Next. So here's some tips on reviewing your balance sheet. you're going to look at the cash. All right. Your cash availability is equal to your cash less any of the prepaids on your balance sheet. A prepaid is money in which there is a credit on the homeowner's account. So that's not your money. If it's a prepaid, it goes back to the homeowner. But some homeowners will pay in advance of their charges being posted to their account. Say, for example, we're approaching here August 1st, the assessments go on. Someone makes a payment here today, July 28th, that would be considered a prepaid. But in 2 days, it will be considered income. Do I have enough cash to pay my obligations? Oh my gosh, am I running out of money? Do we have enough money to include the obligations to pay for capital expenditures? And do I have enough money I need to set up a CD? Are reserves way over the FDIC insured? And I have some answers for those. Statement of revenue expenses. Do I have a large variance on the assessment income? That's to show you how much you're losing, who hasn't been paying. This represents the unpaid assessments. Do I have expenses in the categories as planned to budget? You know, that's where you're going to be looking at your budget and your expenditures. Maybe you didn't budget as much as you needed to for water, so you're going to have to compensate somewhere else in your budget. Is my year-to-date net income positive or negative? If it's negative, it just means you're spending more in that month than you've collected. If your year-to-date is negative, that means you've been spending some savings. Do I need to transfer additional monies to reserves? These are just things you need to kind of look at. Do I need to have special handling for the special assessments collected? For example, initiation fees, many communities collect initiation fees, and those are automatically requested to be transferred to reserves. Next. Cash forecast. This is actually one of my favorite reports. This tells you how much money you're going to have at the end of the year based on what you've spent and based upon what you've budgeted. So I'm going to show you an example of that in a few minutes. Cash disbursement. This is a quick report. Even though you're looking at your statement of revenues and expenses and you're seeing landscape expenses, maybe you want to verify who we paid and go through the vendor listing of cash payments. In invoices, we provide copies of invoices, and some folks didn't know this. The copies of the invoices are provided in the order of the cash disbursement report. So if you have a cash disbursement and you have an invoice, you want to compare those together, you can. Makes it a lot easier. Next. Your AR aging. Again, review the AR aging and note homeowners in a collection status. One thing I do when I'm looking at the aging is you can do this on the portal, is sort it by their collection status. If I've got some that I've already turned over to legal, I don't have to keep looking at those all the time. The ones I want to concentrate on are the first letter and second letter. If they've gotten a second letter status, there's soon going to be a major issue. So those are the ones you want to concentrate on. Prepaid. Some, like I said before, have a credit on their account. If it's a previous owner, we need to look at trying to get their money back to them, else we're supposed to send it to the state. So you do need to look at your prepaids. We actually came across a homeowner that was making their annual payments on a monthly basis and had over $14,000 credit. We're like, wait, stop paying. You're paying too much. So when you're having to refund those big monies, the association has already spent that money, it gets them in trouble. So you need to keep up with your prepaids as well. An owner transfer report, just to give you an idea of who's moving in, who's moving out. Maybe you need to send them a welcome package. Next. All right, let's review some sample reports. There's a team to help you. Each community is assigned a property accountant from accounting. They're able to help you with their financials at month end. They're actually the ones that post your financials, do the reclasses, get credit card stuff, go to the banks and do transfers, things of this nature. So we're all here to help you. Next. We're going to get to some nitty gritty. Here's a balance sheet. Woohoo! This is what you've all been waiting for. How do I read this balance sheet, Sharon? What's it supposed to be telling me? In this particular case, and I wish I had I don't know if you can see my little arrow. Can you see that? I don't know. When you're looking at your balance sheet, if you're looking at your cash, of course, that's your top one. That is where all the payments are coming out of. In this particular case, $76,000 is in the bank today as of March 31st. On this particular case, we have some reserve money. We have it at capital reserve, and they have an emergency fund money. So that's good. The cash reserves on the top part of your balance sheet, your assets, will always match the bottom part reserves on the equity. So those are, we look to verify and make sure they match. Note here that we have a prepaid of $11,319. So that cash of 76 minus your 11,000 there, that's the actual cash you can work with. You always want to see why you have such a high prepaid amount. And those of you that are accountants and CPAs, you're going to look at this right away and you go, whoa, why do we have a loan on the as an asset on the balance sheet? We are cash basis, so normally this information wouldn't be on here at all. But we have it on here just for reference so that the boards and the associations can keep up with their loans and how much they paid year to date for a balance. So it's just nothing but for show. Next. Statement of revenues expenses. In this one particular example, I've highlighted the variance on that very top row. You'll notice that I have asset assessment income. If you look at the year-to-date column, it's $59,994. That's what they were expecting to collect for their assessments year-to-date. If you'll note in the actual collection, it was $57,000. So they are actually short year-to-date $2,000. $2,000. That's your variance. That column right there in the variance is the difference between what you're anticipating, your budget, and comparing it to the actual. The next line down, very good, they have budgeted uncollectible. This association knew that they were not going to be collecting from all of their assessments, from all their dues and homeowners. So they actually budgeted. You'll never see an actual there. It's just for a placekeeper for budgeting purposes. And then again, down in the bottom, I've highlighted the loan principal and interest expense. Since we are a cash basis, those are considered cash expenses. Next. So here's some more further analysis that we're looking at a glance. We're looking for variances that have a negative. That means we have spent more than we anticipated. So water here, this is a big flag. We've spent $25,000 on water when we had budgeted only $17,500. I imagine going down this year as we're going through further into the year, we're going to see more of these types, particularly on the utilities. So that $8,000 is going to have to come out from somewhere else. So if you're looking at this type of thing, you're like, whoa, we're really behind in that. We're going to have to look at some other areas that money can pull from. You can't move the budget, but you need to be aware of it, that it could be a trouble toward the end of the year. Same thing with repairs and maintenance. Repairs and maintenance, they anticipated spending $10,000, but they've only spent $5,000. So there you go. That's a good sign. But they didn't plan to spend anything on plumbing repairs, but of course they have spent $1,700. So it's a give and take. What you're going to look at is that bottom line net operating income. They're in the black, $1,326, which is very good. Their expenditures have actually been what they've collected. Okay, so they collected what they've anticipated spending. Now, the next line down, if they have some reserves, they'll be in trouble. Next. I think this is the same financials, so we're in trouble, right? Transfer to reserves, they transfer $6,000 to reserve each month, okay? And transfer to reserve the initiation fees, that's good. Got a little bit of interest going on. So the cash coming out of the operating account is like actually $7,471. But now, since they had a little bit of income of $1,300, their net total is a negative. So that's going to be something that you would really, really want to keep your eyes on. If you've got a negative right there in your year to date, that means you're spending more money than you're collecting, pulling in. In this case, they would probably not have to, would not be able to transfer to reserves the rest of the year. Next. And this is my favorite report. Take a good look at this. This is called your summarized income forecast. The first 3 columns in this example in yellow, January, February, March, those are your actual expenditures. So if you take the rest of the year in this example, which is in green, these are your budget. If you take your actuals plus what you budgeted, that gives you that revised total in the far right-hand column. It gives you a revised total of what your expenditures would actually be. So if you go down to look at total income even, under original budget, you were budgeting $274,000, but your total income has actually been $285,000. So that's good. It's a great forecasting tool and is very, very important as you're going further into the year. Next. All right, here's a copy example of your prepaid report. I just wanted to point out that anytime you see looking at your prepaid report and you have some little, the little 3 asterisks in front of your account number or the Vansca account number, that means that is a prior owner. You need to let us know and that you would like for us to research and actually refund those monies. If you don't, within a certain time frame, we're supposed to send them to the state. So the sooner we can refund prior owner monies, the better. And you don't want it to build up if you've already started spending the money. Down at the bottom, you'll notice some of the little odd cents, $18, $9, 84 cents, 68, 60. This is where the area in which you may have a collection policy that says if anything's under $1, write it off, whether we owe them or they owe us. In this particular case, you have some current owners and they have a balance, a prepaid balance, for example, 14 cents. Either you have to tell the homeowner to short pay 14 cents on their next assessment, or you can have a policy and just write it off as over shortage for such a small amounts. Next. Ooh, ugly aging report. Very colorful. The aging report is very, very important, like I noted before. You'll notice that they have collection statuses. I always try to sort mine by first letter, second letter, like I said before. But this is very important, not to let it continue to build. One of the things I do like about the aging, if you run it in the portal yourself, if you will double click on the particular charge summary up there, you will see particularly who hasn't paid. For example, if you wanted to looking at special assessment, there's 5 homeowners that haven't paid. There's $3,695.42. You can click on that report off of the portal and you can see exactly who has not paid their special assessment. So it's a quick way to summarize too. But it's very important that you get on top of this aging because this is the only source of income for the community. And again, if you see on here, you've got some prior owners in the very bottom there. Probably shouldn't show the address, but you got the very bottom. There's 3 dots in front of the 2855. That's a prior owner. It may if a guy owes $3,000, it's been with collections. You might talk with the legal team and ask them, should we just go ahead and write this off? Because if it's not collectible and they're still charging you, that's costing you money to try to collect something that's not collectible. So you might as well write them off and get rid of it. Next. All right, training, ABCs. I've gone through and just kind of for fun written ABC of things that you need to pay attention to as you're going through. So A, right off the bat, pay attention. A is for attention. Pay attention to needs of the community. As you're walking through the community, you know, it's the board's responsibility to see things that they can do to improve that that stage. B is for budget, C is for cash, D is for documentation. You can go through and read these as you're looking at them as you're looking at the presentation later. Next. Yeah. G is for goals, H is for healthy. I'm just going to point out a couple of them. And I is for insurance. This is a biggie here. This is very important. It is expensive, but review your association insurance policies, especially your directors and officers for the board when it comes to the financials. This is very, very important. J is for judicious. K is for keep. Be sure and keep your funds reserves funded. L is for look. Next. M is for meeting. Every board, all the boards should be meeting monthly, reviewing the financials. N is for neighbors. O is for open. P is for plan. Q is for quiet. Don't be quiet when it comes to standing up for your community needs to protect your community's investments. You know, you're going to get kickback from the homeowners who don't want to increase their dues. But if you're good about and diligent about explaining it, it will work. R is for raise. Don't be afraid to raise the dues if there's not enough money. Next. Oh, got that in twice. Must be double important. S is for save. T is for taxes. U is for us. Every member of the community is part of us. Decisions impact yourself and all members. V for value. W is for willing. Next. X is for exact. That's not exactly how you spell it, but I thought it was cute. Nothing is always exact when it comes to budgeting. Y is for you. Whether you were voluntold or volunteered, you're an important part of the board in making decisions that will affect changes in the short term and long term. Z is for zeal, the eagerness and ardent interest in pursuing something of importance. Welcome to the board. Congratulations. You got through the Financial Training 101. Melissa wants to do some questions and answer some questions, and if you've got any here.
Sharon, thank you so much. That was such a great ABC spreadsheet. This is going to be a really great package that we're going to provide everybody watching tonight's presentation. And so feel free to provide that or discuss what Sharon just presented when you go to your budget meeting. And she did talk about this, that we are as community association managers for Heritage, they've actually already done their first sets of initial budgets and some training. They're currently right now working with their director, which is also your Heritage point of contact, and they're reviewing things prior to them submitting them to you, the board of directors and or the treasurer specifically, so that you can go ahead and present that to the board. So I think in tandem, this presentation, which was so awesome, and the budget preparation conversation or the initial draft is going to be hopefully incredibly successful for you this year. And I do want to state that it's going to be a tough budget for a lot of folks just because of the cost of living and the CPI index. So keep that in mind when you're taking a look at your contracts. Sharon did a great job of alluding to make sure you check your insurance. These are all things that, while separately are incredibly important, they also play into your association together, and one actually it can affect the other. So now on to some great questions, and I'm going to start this one, Sharon, because while the nature of the question is not something, well, I'll say it's very community specific, so I'll address that, but this is a common question that we get. So I'll answer it first, Sharon, and then I would love to hear your perspective as well. So the first question is, we just took control of the HOA from the previous developer. the developer and Heritage on their behalf, oh, hold on, did not do anything regarding legal collection or of assessments. We have a lot owner that is 4 years in arrears, which we talked about. There's a statute of limitations, okay? And then, so the question here is, what recourse do we have against the builder developer if we cannot collect? So what I'm hearing here is multiple, and the reason why I wanted to point this one out is under the declarant developer phase, they are the board of directors. And so the developer declaration membership class in most associations' declarations have a different set of rules than the membership class that is the resident board of directors. So for that particular question, I absolutely encourage you to take a look at your governing documents. This is a specific question that you'll definitely want to review with your community manager about anything related to this particular lot owner. But as far as the statute of limitations is concerned, this is a perfect opportunity as associations get turned over, and we commonly see that the developer declarant relationship keeps the assessments artificially set low so that they can attract those buyers in and fill the community. And so this also sounds to me like it's part portion that they're concerned about, hey, how are we supposed to even address this with the ownership? Do we have any recourse with the declarant developer? That question we can't answer. That is going to have to be taken offline and truly can be something discussed with your association's attorney if absolutely necessary. There are a lot of conversations and questions about once an association turns over, what rights do they have to go back to the developer? So I certainly encourage whoever asked that question to possibly dig a little bit deeper. But the common question that I wanted Sharon to address is, how do those inaugural boards start that first budget? So now they're in control. They know that they've got to increase their assessments, plus they're being tackled with just the common conversation of the CPI increase. What would you advise, or what would you recommend those first board members to consider when preparing the budget for their community?
Well, you first have to look at your actuals, what you actually have spent money on in the past. And it may be that since you're taking over, you may feel and look at, well, they certainly didn't spend enough on landscaping because we didn't even have any flowers. So, you need to figure out first what your expenses are going to be, and then back it into what the assessments should be. And it could be that your governing documents are limiting you on how much increase you can have per year. I know in ours in Florida, we can only go up 10%. So, and we needed to double it. So you're going to have to have your expenses, but taking that plan, you have a plan and say, well, we can only go up 10% this time, then you're going to have to back down some of your expenses to meet that. So, but you're going to always have to start with what your actuals were.
And I would definitely say too, once you get your first, once that inaugural board starts to really get the financials from the declarant developer, it's also going to tell that same story that Sharon is talking about. And then you'll be able to evaluate, if you're going to include any additional contracts because of responsibilities, or if you're going to be looking at putting any of those out for bid just to ensure that you're having the proper services based on now the resident owners being in control of making decisions on the association's behalf. So that's a really good question. Okay, so this one, Sharon, you're gonna like. These are actually really good questions about reserve studies. And just as a gentle reminder, reserve studies should be updated every 3 to 5 years, or, and there's an or there, or when you've reset life expectancies of responsibility back to zero. Some of those items should be considered, and Sharon delineated the difference between what should be considered an expense from the operating versus the reserve account. So a homeowner has asked, what is the typical cost for a reserve study? Of course, keeping in mind that the size of the community and the amenities within the community might also play a role. What's the ballpark that you've been seeing as you've been reviewing some invoices? I can speak to this as a property manager too.
Yes, you know too. Well, I was going to say you already know. I would say it's probably at least about $2,500 for the first one. But when you renew, it goes down. They don't have, when they first come out, they generate everything. They give you a whole entire, very comprehensive report. And then when you renew, then they're just reviewing what they already had done. So it's less. Is that about what you're seeing, Melissa? About 2,500, 3,000?
That's exactly correct. And generally they'll require a 50% deposit up front, because just as Sharon was identifying, the very first reserve study that you do, or if you switch a reserve study company, or if your reserve study is over 10 years, okay, and you're having to have this completely redone from scratch, just as Sharon indicated, there is going to be an individual that's going to come out to your facility, to their drive or walk the property. They're going to identify areas of opportunity, whether it's maintenance or stormwater management, things that maybe some persons might not catch immediately. So they're a fantastic extra set of eyes. And then, just as Sharon said, they're going to give this great report. It's going to be empirical data that you as a board can utilize to draft that budget. And a lot of, going back to the developer question, a lot of developers are fantastic in providing an association that reserve study at the time of turnover, or they might already have something called a building review or a conditions study of your association. So that's fantastic. And as far as renewing is concerned, that's a very easy process. If you keep that same professional vendor that did your original study, that did the on-site inspection, then it's only several $100s when you go to renew it or update it. And again, what ends up happening is your community manager, or if you're a self-managed board, you will take the proposals and the projects that were completed, what the estimation was versus what the board actually paid. And then those invoices and your current financials get sent over to that reserve study company, and that's how they update your reserve study. So they do want to keep you competitive. This is why we recommend that. So that's a fantastic question. And I do think that we have one more, and I'm just waiting for that one to populate, and then we might be finished for the evening. Take a look at it right here. I might also be having internet issues where I'm located, so I sincerely apologize. Okay, good. We have several more. I love that even more. Okay, get back in my window. Sorry, friends. As you can see, if you've joined us before, I am traveling and I just couldn't stay away from board training. So I'm not in my natural habitat. And so thank you for allowing me some assistance and grace. Okay, the next question. Oh, this one, Sharon, you'll like. Should a treasurer's report be included with the board meeting minutes? Yes, not the transcript, not the AR report. The protected information should be excluded, but if you missed our last board training class a few weeks ago, I specifically actually talked about this exact content, how to structure your board meeting and create an agenda. And absolutely one of the recommendations we have is include any treasurer, financial reports, committee reports. Absolutely, I think that that's fantastic. Sharon, what are your thoughts?
Yes, definitely. You would not have to attach the entire financial package, but indications from the treasury report, for example, the status of a particular money. Maybe you've got, you want to give a status of special assessment that you've collected, 80%, we've still got 20% to collect, just some kind of general analysis. And it's always best, D is for documentation, to document as much information as you possibly can on the decisions that you make and why you're making these financial decisions. You know, you could even document that the plan was to get started on XYZ, but we can't because of the cash flow is too low right now, or we've had unexpected water repairs or things of this nature. You always want to document that because you may remember it as a board, but now, you know, 2 boards later or 5 years later, they come back and they're like, when was that repaired? What did they do? It's easier. They can go back and read some of the documentation.
Those are fantastic points, and you are absolutely correct. Okay, so this one says, what types of financial reports or information should be made available to homeowners? So if I'm not a board member, what am I allowed to see?
We provide the income statement and balance sheet. That's it.
That is correct. So each homeowner is available to receive the budget for the, or I should say the annual budget, if you will, on an annual basis. And then our company and or your board will prepare monthly statements. And as Sharon was saying, not only does Heritage provide this complete inclusive financial package by middle of the month to the board members, once everything has been approved in the system, checked by the community manager, the property accountant, and Sharon's team and the board, we then, Vanica has an awesome automatic send to all of our associations on the 25th of the month. So if you're a Heritage partner, your homeowners are going to see your annual budget, and they're also going to see your monthly statements, which only include the balance sheet and the income statement.
And the budget is on the income statement as well.
It is. There will be the variance. You'll see the month to date and year to date versus actuals. Okay. So for a new community, do you have any strategies for getting tenants on board with building reserves for roof replacement? Hold on. Yes. Estimated roof replacement is about $60 per month per townhome. Okay, the problem is we don't need new roofs for 18 when a lot of the residents will be gone. Oh, this is, okay, so I'm just going to kind of re-summarize this. This is a very specific topic, but this is a question we get a lot of times. Why are we going to spend the money or put money in reserves if I'm not even going to be a homeowner that's going to benefit from it? How am I even supposed to have that conversation? This is a lot of times why people don't run for the board. I mean, that's a difficult conversation, and hey, that's your next door neighbor that you're having to have that with. But as Sharon will tell you, you're running a business and you have a fiduciary responsibility. There's a big F word there, Sharon. I don't know if that's what F is for on your sheet, but
it is. F is for fiduciary.
I love it. You know, obviously seek what your maintenance responsibilities are outlined in your declaration. You know, some townhomes are responsible for the roofs and the exterior and some are not. So please pay very close attention to that. But think about it in this particular circumstance. You homeowner that maybe your community's brand new. It's only 3 years old. You just turned over. And now your reserve study is telling you you've got to put extra $60 per month per homeowner just for a roof that I'm not going to see in 5 years when I sell my home. I will remind you that you're in a brand new community that's 3 years old, and you get to reap the value and the benefit of no real maintenance. $60 for a roof replacement in the future is based on potentially that building study, the most responsible way to aggregate that cost and to spread it across all those that are using the benefits of the current association before it turns over into a lot of maintenance. We generally start to see a community age like 15 to 20 years, especially if there are a lot of trees. Just because those root systems like to find their way into your water lines and sidewalks and driveways. Sharon, do you have any other items to add to that?
No, the most important part, or most important responsibility that the board has is to maintain your asset. And your buildings are part of your community's assets. And to attract new buyers into your community, you've got to maintain it. Like I said before, you even have new buyers and lenders looking at your financials. And so if they're looking at the financials and they don't see that money is being set aside for future expenditures and repairs, that can then hurt the potential loan values and loan opportunities and new buyer opportunities. So you have to put you have to show that financial picture and healthy financial picture for new future homeowners.
I couldn't agree more. And I think you referenced this earlier in your conversation. It's so unfortunate what transpired at Surfside last year. It is absolutely making insurance underwriters reevaluate coverages and what they will cover and what they will not. As we're starting to see, Fannie and Freddie has required for those townhomes and condo associations, if a potential buyer, their lender requirement is a Fannie or Freddie disclosure or closing statement, it's a very arduous process to answer that very, very strict document. And the number one thing that they're looking at is, when was the last time that you had a professional engineer step on foot on this property and make sure that the structural integrity and the building maintenance has been identified and calculated so that the board has that empirical data. That it's a sincere sentiment, and it's unfortunate that it took a tragedy of that magnitude in order to open everyone's eyes. This has been the plight of any coastal condominium community, any townhome or condominium association. It's a great question, and I encourage that if this is a community specific item that we can assist you with, we'd love to take that offline and better support you for that, because again, we're answering generally. There might be some other things that we can particularly pinpoint, but brings up some incredible. Okay, so this looks like it's going to be the last question of the evening, and it looked like I froze in a really awesome position. There was a lot of information shared tonight. Sharon, what would be the recommended first step for someone who is becoming the treasurer of a board?
Well, the first step is to review the current financials, and if you've got questions and don't quite understand it, I'll never forget, we had a board member called me and she wanted to make an appointment because she didn't know how to read the financials. She told me, she said, Sharon, if you come to the emergency room, I'll save your life, but I cannot read a number on this thing. I have no idea what it meant. And so by the time we got through understanding that's a simple cash flow process, she was like, oh my gosh, just opened the eyes. So, your financials, your particular statement of revenues and expenses, it tells a story. I can read it and tell you if you got paint. I can tell you if you did landscaping. I can, it just tells a story. I can tell you how much you're collecting, and who's how much you're not collecting too. So I would say the first step would be, but you've actually really taken the first step is being on the training class. That's what you've got to do. You
stole my thunder, Sharon. Oh my goodness.
Yes, it would be the second step. But I'm happy to help you in any way as well, in understanding them if it's not, your normal cup of tea.
I couldn't agree more, and I share her sentiment. I think that's a great question to wrap it up. Thank you so much to everybody that took the time to participate. If this is the first time that you've joined us going through this class, Sharon has a really nice following of people who just consistently take all of her training, treasury courses. So you absolutely have taken the best first step. I'm going to tell you the next step is you're going to go to heritageproperty.com. You're going to go to our community focused education page. You're going to go and take a look at all of the board training classes that we've hosted this year and what we've got coming up. And I guarantee you that too is going to be a great stepping stone for you. And that's whether you're the treasurer, member at large. Hey, you could even be the ARC committee chair and you're like, ooh, do I want to dip my toe in the water and become the treasurer? I'm not really quite sure. This is a great opportunity. So Sharon is also going to be joining us in about maybe 3-4 weeks, and she is going to be co-hosting with me our budget boot camp for board members. As we alluded to earlier, our managers are already in the thick of providing your first rough drafts to their director before they release them out to you for review. And in 2 weeks, 2 Thursdays from now, you'll be joining me on all things about association documents. This will be the third class, 3rd-part series in a 7-part series. Fact, when we get to the treasurers and the financials class, I think I just want Sharon to go ahead and over that portion too, because the content that you've added in this class is fantastic. So if you've got any other questions about what an association's responsibilities or board member responsibilities are, we're so happy that you joined us. This is exactly what we want you to be participating in. Feel free to share any of our resources and materials with any of your homeowners, your committee members. One of the things that Sharon and I like to advocate and our property management team like to advocate with Heritage University is allow this to be some like a warm hug insulation to show to your community for future volunteers that they don't have to be intimidated. You know, as Sharon said, it's important to know your financials, but you don't need to be a CPA in order to be the treasurer. So allow us to help support you. This is a great opportunity. All of our classes are free. So on that note, I'm going to allow all of you the rest of your evening. Thank you to those who joined us for the Q&A session. We look forward to seeing you in our audience again very soon. Have a great night, everyone.